Hey everybody, welcome to the Engage and Equip podcast, a resource designed to build substantive disciples for the local church. I'm here with Sawyer Henderson, and we're going to do the Ask Me Anything questions from April 13th. April 12th. All right, it's Tuesday. Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
Great.
Yeah, we're going to jump right in. There are a lot of questions today, which is great. So Nick's going to do his best.
Concision of speech, yes.
Yes, to be concise, especially with this first one, because it could probably expand or contract to fill the amount of time we allow.
Yeah, so I'll try to give short answers, and then if you feel like more is helpful, then ask a follow-up question.
Okay, will do. Great. Well, the first question here says, how has the Protestant Reformation affected the church as an institution?
Dramatically.
Good job.
Yeah.
Question two. Just kidding.
Yeah, I mean, a lot. Protestantism is itself a number of different movements and sub-movements. Yeah, it is true that the Protestant Reformation was an additional dynamic that made it so there just wasn't one church government over the whole global church. Mm-hmm. That had already happened in the Great Schism in the 11th century between the Orthodox or Eastern Christians and the Western Christians.
I think most people do not learn that I did not learn that in public school.
Yeah. So the church had already divided in the 11th century between the East and the West, and they had anathematized each other and so on.
Yeah.
And then in the Reformation, it's important to remember, and this is very important, that the Roman Catholic Church ejected the Protestant reformers. They did not just leave in schism. The Reformation means trying to reform something. They wished to reform the church, which was the Roman Catholic Church, with the hope that ultimately it would reform the Eastern Church and there would be one church. The Roman Catholic Church took a combative view against the reformers and threw them out.
Yeah.
And so because of that, the Protestant Reformation became a situation in which there became two Western churches essentially.
Yeah.
And that changes the dynamic of the church as an institution. But there's still 100 ways in which that could exist. We could hate each other. We could work together pretty well. There's lots of ways in which there could be really deep cooperation between the churches depending on the people involved in what we choose to do. Yeah. So yes, it affected it a lot. You're talking about like a master's degree in terms of like all the answer to that question, obviously.
Yeah.
But it did make it more democratized, more separated. It allowed for more charismatic leadership, people who rose like just on their own merit as opposed to being appointed in certain places. And it had benefits and also some liabilities.
Right.
So it has led to a more entrepreneurial church, which I think has kept the church healthier and more vibrant. But the main difference really is not whether or not a church has been Catholic or Protestant, though that's been very significant. The biggest issue is whether or not a church has been a state church or a free church. Churches that have been part of the government have pretty much dwindled relatively rapidly in their vibrancy. That's one of the reasons why there's so many fewer people in Europe that go to church. It's not Protestant versus Catholic. It's more state church versus free church.
Interesting.
And so for me, that's a bigger deal. And the Catholic Church in most countries has been more willing and had more opportunity to be the state religion. And I think that that's affected the Catholic Church very negatively. So I don't know. I have a lot of opinions about this, but yeah, it's been a big effect on the church as an institution.
Great. Okay. Question number 2, please speak to how leadership quality affects either helping or hindering the healthy functioning of the body.
I think the simplest way to answer this question is if you read the Old Testament in particular, the people of God or Israel do about as well as they're led.
Yeah.
When the king is somewhat righteous, the people seem to follow that. When the king is wicked, they seem to slide back into whatever they're doing. If the king affirms idolatry, the people become idolaters. So as the people are led in the authoritative function, that is the overseer, not necessarily the priests, the people tend to acclimate to that. And so when you have leadership that is godly and humble, and you tend to get a church like that. And when it's not, you tend to get the opposite. Churches tend to mirror their leadership. And so because of that, I think leadership is decisively important.
Yeah. Great. As society has modernized, that's in quotes, modernized, we have moved away from and had strong cultural pushback against practices like public execution. Do you think this is appropriate or inappropriate depending on other cultural factors? Or is it something more universally good or bad for all human governments?
Yeah, I don't know exactly how to connect that with this sermon I preached.
I think I know the answer. You mentioned stoning in Israel, Israeli culture. That was at least in
first service. Right? That's true. Yeah. Yeah, I think the system of justice should in some ways fit the structure of the society, right? Most of these differences, some of these differences have to do with that societies had practices that were functionally inhuman or they were objectively unjust. So the person is asking, is this a cultural difference? Like, is it a relative difference or is it an objective difference that should be this way in all cultures and all places and all times?
Yeah.
And of course, the answer with almost all questions like that from a Christian perspective is yes. It's both of those things. There are some things that are objective. People should be treated with equal dignity. So equal treatment under the law would be a universal Christian principle, right? The question of if somebody does X thing wrong, how should they be treated by the government and how public should that treatment be? I think there can be relativity to that question.
Yeah.
For example, if somebody takes the life of another human being, they murder someone, I think there might be a number of Christian-ish options for what you could do there. And I think it could include public execution in certain contexts. And I think it could include long-term imprisonment or lifelong imprisonment in certain contexts. I think that if you were to compare something like stoning in the Old Testament with imprisoning somebody for 15 years, then giving them parole for murder, Christianly speaking, the stoning of the Old Testament would be more biblical. Because biblically speaking, if you kill a person made in the image of God, your life is forfeit. Full stop. Yeah. So going to prison for a while and getting out, not if it was murder, that is that there was intention in your action and it was like even for deaths of negligence, you are allowed to live in a certain place called cities of refuge. Yeah. And as long as you stayed in the city of refuge, your life couldn't be taken. And so your life was controlled and limited in that way permanently. But if you lived in the city of refuge, you couldn't be killed, right? And that's how they treated manslaughter. Now you could argue that like imprisonment for a certain period of time versus living in a city of refuge. But biblically speaking, it says in the book of Genesis, relative to the narrative about Noah, that the penalty for taking a person's life is that your life is forfeit. I think that is a universal pre-law principle. And thus true for all people in all places and all time. So murder deserves death. Yeah. You could say full lifelong imprisonment is a kind of death, I suppose, but it's not really. Yeah. So in that sense, I think that you can argue that some of the stuff we do in our more, quote, civilized society is actually more inhuman and less civilized. But I wouldn't want to say that all the way across the board. I think like the legal system's a good example of this, right? Like most people would agree that if there were times where you went in front of a judge and the judge was like, you were like, I didn't steal the horse. And the other people were like, you stole the horse. And the judge was like, I think you stole the horse. Hanging. Like to like the system of law we have now where there's a lot more due process and you can get a jury trial and you like, I think a lot of people would argue that clearly dignifies the accused person better and thus is more Christian and more moral, right? At the same time, our legal system has become so complicated that there are still ways to cheat and game the system. People with a lot more money tend to do better, blah, 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 right? So there's a lot of people who, like there was a survey done some years ago, which if I remember correctly, it said that people were more afraid of having to do anything in our legal system than dying, right? Wow. Meaning it came to mind more as a fear, I think. Okay. Right? Because like, I mean, if you think about like how afraid am I to go in a family court if my wife decided to divorce me? Well, I'm terrified because I have no idea what will happen because I don't trust it at all, right? Yeah. That doesn't signal to me like our system is a lot better. Right. But at the same time, they're like, well, would you prefer Sharia law to decide how I'd be like, I'm not sure. Probably not. Yeah. So I think there is relativity to it. Yeah. For example, I was joking with somebody that I'm kind of for Sharia law courts as long as everybody who gets involved is like volunteers, because you can get a decision in 20 minutes. So as opposed to like 17 years.
Give a 30-second description of Sharia law.
So Sharia law is like Islamic law, and they have a whole system of like judges and so on. Now, okay. Generally speaking, I'm against it in Western societies, right? Yeah. But I understand why a lot of Muslims, even in places like England, seek out private Sharia law courts because they can get a decision for almost no money in 2 weeks, and it's versus over.
Years and years.
Right. Yeah. Right. And the decisions are no better. Somebody with some discernment has to make a call about something relative to rules that everybody's agreed upon. I'd be great to have like Christian Sharia courts. Like, I mean, like literally the Bible says if you're a Christian, you should never have to go to court if you're dealing with another Christian. You should be able to get somebody of like low repute in the church who's like a nobody. Tell him both sides of the argument. That person should be able to solve it, and you should be able to accept the answer if you're a virtuous person of integrity. You should both be able to accept it. Why would you go to court? That's crazy. It means you've already been defeated in your faith totally already, Paul says. Yeah. What that means is that Christians should be able to have a informal Sharia thing. It's not really in that we don't have law. Like here are the books and all the it's just like, okay, let's listen. Okay, this is what would be just.
Yeah.
And then the people will be like, yeah, okay, we'll do that. Right? That's how it should work. The fact that we have legal courts is because we've all been totally morally defeated already, is Paul's argument. And he's right.
Yeah.
Right. And courts they're not wizards. Like judges aren't wizards.
Right.
They don't know what happened. I mean, sometimes like the evidence is sufficient, right? But in pastoring, what you find out as you talk to people about the court cases they've been a part of is somebody just lied.
Yeah.
And the people didn't do the due diligence to find out, or there was no evidence, or they falsified the evidence, or they whatever, and they stole people's lives. And the court just basically went along with it. Or so somebody knew so-and-so and such, right? And so they got like this lawyer hobnobbed with that judge at this thing. And of course, like they wouldn't say they're corrupt, but they just tend to be more favorable towards their friends. It's the way it is, right? You know, these are the judges, the lawyers that are in, these are the people who are out, these are the firms that matter, these are the firms that don't matter.
Yeah.
Right? So I wouldn't say that our system of justice in America is particularly just. I think it's like egregiously problematic. But like the Bible says, like, is it better than nothing?
Right.
Probably.
Yeah.
Like chaos and anarchy is bad. So yes, some of these things are objective. Some of these things are relative. And to be a Christian, you don't have to know all that. As a society, we have to apply it the best we can.
Yeah.
But as a Christian, or to be part of our church or something, you don't have to know all that stuff. You just have to know we're pursuing human dignity, but holistically to the whole public as well as to the individual person who receives justice and to the victim who has been victimized and the people in the victimization circle. Justice must be done in all of those parameters as best we can.
Great. Cool. Okay, next question. It says, building a lasting institution could also become an exercise in pride. Is the differentiator of a prideful versus a moral institution, prideful or moral institution building that which the institution is pointed toward?
Okay, so if you're building an institution and you want it to be great, there's two things that should happen. One, the institution should form the people who enter it, not the other way around. So if you become a Marine, the Marines form the recruits into Marines. The recruits don't tell the Marines what they should get.
Yeah.
Right? The second side is you have to stay ruthlessly focused on your goal, right? The purpose of the Marines is war fighting. Maximum lethality, the shortest period of time, inflicting the most casualties on the enemy justly, and the least casualties being suffered by ourselves.
Yeah.
Right? So let me give an example of this, and this is a little bit political, but therefore, in my view, who the gender of the Marines or their sexual orientation is not a claim for justice. If wars are better fought with all men on the front lines, women don't have a claim to be treated equally. The purpose of the Marines is maximum lethality on the front. Whatever feeds into maximum lethality on the front is what you do. So for example, if gay male soldiers help with that, then you have gay male soldiers. If gay male soldiers for some reason don't help with that, you don't have gay male soldiers. You don't say, well, let's do these justice things, like the things we think are good, and then put that in. No, the purpose of the Marines is maximum lethality and war fighting.
Okay.
Right? Does that make sense? Similarly, in the church, what's the point of the church? The point of the church is to make substantive disciples of Jesus the Christ who have learned to obey everything that he's commanded and who do the good acts he's prepared beforehand to do, to love our neighbor and to love God, right? And you could add some other summary verses like to love mercy and to do justly and to walk humbly with our God. To do that, the just will live by that faith, right? And you say, okay, that's what we're doing. Okay, so then everything that the church does is to that end, right? That's the goal. And whoever comes into the church to be formed and ordered around that goal. Not what they want, not what they think they deserve, but towards that end. So the two main things are, one, that the people coming in know what they're coming in for, what they're coming in to do, and who they're going to become in order to be people who can do that, i.e. substantive disciples of Jesus. And the leadership, those who lead, have to keep telling the people coming in what they're coming in for and keep everything in the organization ruthlessly focused on the end goal. Now, this becomes a problematic when there's something to gain inside the institution other than the execution of the goal. Like people start making a living at it. Does that make sense? So if a church grows larger and a pastor can make his name for himself, like writing books and being cool and blah, 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 that becomes a perverse incentive, even though it could feed into the goal of the institution. That's where you get these perverse incentives where, like, as you move up in leadership, there's more benefits you can accrue to yourself because of your position, right?
Yeah.
Though those benefits are supposed to exist to free you to focus on the goal of the organization. That's why in any institution, you're going to have a hierarchy because somebody's going to lead and somebody's not. Like anytime you have 3 people in the room, somebody starts leading. The problem is as you create a hierarchy, that creates perverse incentives for corruption, right? And so you have to have somebody who can bear the incentives of corruption. And what scripture says is that people like that are very rare and very hard to build. So Nehemiah, for example, is this like standout in his generation. And when he goes back to Persia, he looks for who he can put in his place when he goes. And he said that he appointed a couple of men who, quote, fear God more than most, but not somebody who fears God so much that he does God's will all the time in every way, like Nehemiah was trying to do. And when he got back after a few years' absence, things had like really come apart, mostly because of the toleration of corruption.
Yeah.
And the leader not being insistent upon what needed to be done to achieve their goals and allowing people to say from the institution what they wanted and how they want the institution to be at their disposal rather than for them to be formed in the institution for the goal for which it exists, i.e. the temple and the ministry of God. So yeah, it's really hard. It's really hard. And this is why leadership quality is really important, but not just training or education, but the character of the quality of the leader and the kinds of things leaders have to do to maintain their integrity. So for example, like rest and sabbaticals and spiritual time and spiritual retreats, when pastors use those, they deal with their issues of like envying people who make more money than them, but who aren't more gifted than they are, but who are doing jobs outside the church.
Yeah.
And like, you know, like I can look at those families and be like, well, they get to go on nice vacations and they have nicer cars and they live like better lives in these materialistic ways, as opposed to me saying, I'll never be able to pay God back for the privilege of choosing me to do this work and to get what seems like a harder life and a less rich life and to reorient myself towards the riches that he gives me for placing me in this place. And for everything I lose, he gives me back 100-fold in brothers, sisters, mothers, right? And sufferings. And in the life to come, eternal life. Yeah. So that's one of the reasons why, like High Point Church, like they've sent me on 2 sabbaticals over the course of my 16 years. They don't oversee, like if I take days off for spiritual stuff, or if I go fishing, or if I like get away, for that to like keep me where I need to be, so that I don't look at this as a place where I can get wealthier, or I can make a name for myself so I can go to a bigger church, or the kinds of pitfalls that I'm prone to. Accountability can be good too. Like I have elders that do accountability with me. But there's a reason why institutions need accountability, because if you don't, then the corrupting influences are pretty strong. So those are some of the things I would say about that. Yeah. You have to, institutions require leadership that stays focused on the mission. There's no mission drift, and they do not let people coming into the organization determine what the organization is there for. Yeah.
So just to try to ask this past question a slightly different way, outside of the church, if people are trying to kind of look at some type of institution and evaluate it, what are kind of the what's the grid that you kind of run it through? Like, are you evaluating the pride of the leadership? Are you evaluating the mission? How do you, does that make sense?
Yeah. For me, it's impact and efficiency, right? So is the organization actually having the impact they claim to want to have?
I assume, though, you also are thinking of some type of noble end. Like, let's say an institution is just aimed at something completely contrary to Christ. I mean, how does, so that's, I would imagine that's a step before that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
But if I was just evaluating an organization,
sure,
I might start with their premises. But if it's an organization I was going to be part of, absolutely, it would be an organization that was pursuing a noble end. And then the question is it just a vague noble end, or is it like so for example, if you're like, we want to help the poor. Okay, great. Do you know what helps the poor? So part of it is like, how realistic are you, and how do you know the dynamic in which you're interacting with, or are you just idealistically abstract, right? Because like I said in our staff training yesterday, that something like, I don't know, 85 to 90% of money spent on the poor doesn't help the poor; it hurts the poor.
Yeah.
And so that could lead you to just be like, well, we're just not doing anything for the poor then, because or you could be like, okay, wait, we need to figure out what that 10% is that actually does help.
Yeah.
And we need to scale that as much as we can. And we need to get rid of the toxic charity as much as we can so that people who are in poverty can be helped, right?
Yeah.
Most organizations do not have anybody differentiated enough and hard-minded enough with that kind of integrity. Like, I don't care how we feel. If we're here to help the poor, we have to ask, are we helping the poor? Does that make sense? So most nonprofits, in my experience, are not achieving even what they say they want to achieve. They don't do any measuring to see if they do it, and they are untroubled by this fact. Right? Whereas I think that I just can't stand that idea. Right? I mean, every businessman knows they get off track for 20 minutes and their customers will buy from somebody else.
Yeah.
Right? So yes, I think focus on the goal, and then efficiency, like, how much resource does it take to accomplish your goal? And when it's not efficient, what I assume is either A, we don't know how to do it. B, a lot is getting sucked out by people who are making their livings. Right. And that's primarily what's happening is people are making livings. So for example, if you look at, like Charles Murray wrote, and I think in like 1982, if you took all the welfare programs in America and all the people who were employed in them, which was mostly white women, and you just took all that money and you just cut a check to the American poor,
it would have.
They'd be way better off, like in terms of like being out of poverty. Like you could basically almost cut a check to the American poor and have them be out of poverty. What we're instead doing is transferring this enormous amount of taxes to a bunch of mostly women who've entered the workforce now since the 1960s, who need jobs and have gone into social care jobs. Yeah. And now we just give all this money to them. Like a man used to make it, and then he used to have that money with his wife. Now the woman has gone to work. So now we take the money from the man and we pay her at her job to do a social job. And now she's working and she's not working at her home. And we call this taking care of the poor. The poor are no better off financially or functionally. And we all think that we're taking care of the poor through our social safety net. No, we're not. We're paying all the women who went to work, who used to live at home, who used to be at home. So they do jobs that don't seem to have profound effects positively. It's just a weird system. Yeah. Right. We could, if we wanted to, figure out what actually helps people who are in poverty. And we could target to those things and scale them and build something that really helped poor people get ahead in the society that we have. I'm sympathetic towards the government because our society is changing so fast. It's hard to do that. Yeah. The reasons people are poor and kept in poverty keep changing. And as that target moves, the government's like, trying to shoot it. So like, I have a lot of sympathy for people in social programming work. But when I interact with them, when I talk with them, when I look at their literature, they are not nearly as ruthlessly focused on success as the people who sell salt. Sure. Because those people have competition. Yeah. So anyway, and you're starting to see this a little bit in schooling. Like in Florida now, like half of the kids in Florida go to private schools or choice schools. Oh, now there's competition. Yeah, now the competition is real. Like in places like Wisconsin, it's like 10% of kids go to private schools. There isn't anything like real competition. So no, the public, it doesn't really realize yet that schools like ours, we teach kids better on a third of the money, or like about 40% of the money. The average taxpayer, if they realize that smaller schools controlled by subgroups of people who, like, the parents can be really involved. Every kid plays, like there's a way better educational experience for 40% of the money. A lot of taxpayers would be like, what are we doing? Right. But it's still a small enough group that it's not a majority of the electorate. It's off the radar. Yeah. And when that happens, people who have monopolies, they aren't efficient. Monopolies aren't efficient. And this is just human nature. We'd love for it to be different, but it isn't. So when I look at organizations like this, I think, are they ruthlessly focused on the effects of what they do? Not like, well, we gave this much food to people, so we're helping the poor. It's like, okay, but are the people better off than they were a year ago? Right. Or are they like, and so there are just like direct need meetings, and those you can measure and just be like, well, we gave away this much food. Yeah. But if over time those people aren't better off, you have to ask yourself the question, like, what is going on? Yeah. Does that make sense? That makes sense. And then if you determine, well, yeah, sometimes we just need charity organizations. They just fill holes where people need needs met, and those people can't. Then, okay, if you've made that decision and you really think that's the case, okay, like we do that with kids. But a lot of times there are people that could have their own. They could make their own businesses. They could make incomes that they could live on. But our system doesn't allow that. And so then we backfill it. It becomes a very weird system.
It's tough.
But yeah, like in Madison, there's something like 7,000 nonprofits.
It's a large
It's so
amount.
many. It's an unbelievable number. And I've talked to a lot of people in the city, and whether they're liberal, atheist, Christian, blah, blah, most of them under their breath, to me privately, non-recorded, will say, if 3% of them are doing something that actually matters, I'd be shocked. Right. And I totally agree with that. And most of the people who run them make twice or 3 or 4 times as much as me. There are some that their whole income is like $500,000 and their CEO salary is $486,000.
Wow.
And you're like, wait, that's a racket. Like, why isn't but yeah, there's a guy in Madison who, like, he left for a while and he came back. He's a nonprofit leader, and he managed to get a spreadsheet. He built a spreadsheet of every organization, all that they took in financially, and the CEO salary.
Wow.
And then he organized it by different kinds of nonprofits, religious nonprofits, social, right? And when we were doing some work with somebody's salary in a nonprofit that I'm on the board of, I asked if we could use it, and he gave it to us. He's like, just don't tell anybody. Like, don't tell them who I am, or don't like release it publicly.
Sure.
And I was like, fine. But it's scary. It's like just looking at that one spreadsheet, you're like, this is such a racket. And you can see this politically with like money going from like businesses to nonprofits to nonprofits to nonprofits to nonprofits to the government to political parties to elections to nonprofits to vote harvesting. And you're like, oh my gosh, this nonprofit sector has become incredibly corrupt.
Yeah.
And this is where the church is. The church is in this big nonprofit sector that is growing increasingly corrupt. And like eventually this could come back and really hurt us, because it's one thing if the public says, oh, the church shouldn't have nonprofit status. It's another thing when the public wakes up and realizes that the nonprofit sector of the American economy has become one big slush fund. And when they realize that, they're not going to be like, well, the churches aren't part of that.
Right.
They're going to come down like a hammer, and it's going to affect us too. And we're actually doing good. Like, I have no question. Like you could argue we're not doing $3 million a year good. That'd be really hard to argue, though.
Yeah.
We do a lot of good that people don't understand.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay, next question. In a healthy church, what kind of institutions or actions can one take to become the fascia of the congregation? Now, if you are like me and don't know what the word fascia means, I've Googled it, and it's that like a ligament-ish type of tissue in the body that holds organs together.
Organs in place, yeah. So like when you roll on the ground, your heart and your lungs don't get tied in a knot and you die. Right. There's all kinds of tissue in there that kind of holds organs in place.
Yeah.
And so the context of this is in my sermon, I talked about how in Ephesians, I think it's 4:17, it talks about the leaders in the first verses. And then it says like the church is held together by ligaments and sinews. And I said, leaders are more like ligaments than they are like the mouth or the eyes of the church. Like the whole head is Jesus. Right. So what we do is we like hold these organs together. And so somebody's like, okay, as you hold all the inner organs together, you have this stuff like called fascia that holds it together. Like, how can you do that work? Because I talked about how the church can be fractious and divisive. Anything that brings about solidarity, unity, mutual understanding, that covers over a multitude of sins, that takes the plank out of your own eye before the speck in your brother's eye, Matthew 7, and so on. Anything that helps us to bear with and put up with each other. There's this place in in Philippians, the very end of Philippians, he says, these two women who are contenders at my side have a disagreement. Come around them and help them agree with each other. Right? That kind of ministry, the kind of ministry that reaches out and tries to create reconciliation.
Yeah.
That doesn't make conflicts worse than they have to be. Deals with them directly, but gives people a way back. That as much as it depends on us, we live at peace with everybody. Right? We want to forgive. We are also quick to repent.
Yeah.
Right? As much of that as you can do is what you want to do. And then I would add to that things like speaking frankly with candor, but also kindness.
Yeah.
The more people learn, because right now, if you speak directly with somebody and they perceive it as any kind of conflict, they just fold.
Yeah.
So as a church community, we need to learn to like speak directly to each other.
Yeah.
But not to be like, there's a song lyric, I think it's from Taylor Swift, where she's talking about an old boyfriend, and she said he was casually cruel in the name of being honest. And like that is like a beautiful poetic representation of the opposite of how a Christian should speak. where like you can just be like, well, I'm just being honest, and being just casually cruel to people.
Yeah.
And we should be exactly the opposite of that, is that we should say, okay, I'm going to say the truth. What's the kindest way I can say this, but still say the truth.
Yeah.
That's always, so people say in parenting, when you discipline your kids, you want to use the minimum necessary force. You need to use the necessary force.
Yeah.
But you use the minimum necessary force, and you do it in the kindest way, the indirectest way you can.
Yeah.
Similarly, when we talk to people in the church, we want to use the minimum necessary force. We want to be kind and calm, but also truly have candor. The more we do that, the more we are able to talk to each other. The more we can grow in that emotional maturity that makes us less fractious. The society that we're building right now is one of the most emotionally fragile and immature societies I can imagine us creating.
Yeah.
And because of that, I think that we need to do everything we can to build that emotional maturity.
Yeah.
So forgiveness, all that stuff.
Yeah. Just to, as the groups guy, I'll add this. This is all of the things you just said are true, but you cannot do them if you don't know anybody at church. So you should join a group. You should have relationships with people. You should talk to people in the lobby on a Sunday.
Yeah.
You just can't do those things without other people. So
yeah, absolutely.
So send me an email if you aren't connected.
Yeah.
Great. Next question. How do you keep your spiritual cup full as an emotional support person?
Yeah. Okay. So if you're like a small group leader, a pastor, or if you have a job where you're serving other people, especially if they have emotional issues, like a counselor or something like that, you have to keep your own cup full. There's a couple things, like some are becoming emotionally mature in taking on other people's problems. There's a way in which you can sympathize with somebody and yet not carry that with you. Like ideally, I can go meet with somebody and cry with them. And then I can leave and I don't carry that with me. That's the ideal.
How?
Yeah. I'm not sure I always know the answer to that.
Yeah.
I think it's trying to stay in the moment in what I'm doing. What's my job? Like, what does God call me to do at this moment? Yeah. And right now it's to pay total attention to this person. And that has moved me to tears. Like when I really try to listen to who they are. Most of the time our mind is elsewhere.
Yeah.
Or we're thinking about ourselves. When I really enter into the other person's experience, what they are trying to say, they are a human like everybody else, and their experience, like Tolstoy said, is utterly unique to themselves also. And in that sense, I can connect with them as a universal human being, but I also have to do the extra work of being like, wait, what is it like to be you saying this, to be you feeling this, to be you experiencing this? And if I can do both of those things, I can connect as a fellow human being with what they're going through. When that happens, usually I really can emote with them and like really enter into what they're doing. But then I can also get up and leave.
Yeah.
And usually I don't carry that with me because then I try to be really with the next thing I'm doing.
Yeah.
And you can do that. I don't know if men are better at it than women, or men can be, or are naturally compartmentalized better than them. I'm not really sure if that's true or how true. It might be different. And I think that I've seen women, like my wife's a counselor, and I've seen her like building the skill where because like she'll get it one right after another.
Sure.
Like with me, it's not like I'm not doing funerals like all day, right? Like I'll usually have 2 or 3 emotional interactions each day. Yeah. And that's usually the max for me because I'm at the level I'm at. I'm dealing with bigger questions of organization and stuff.
Sermon to write.
Right. I have sermons to write and so on. So, but like with a counselor or somebody who literally is doing direct personal care, that can happen. And for that kind of stuff, it's kind of like, one is deal with your own wounds and hurts and so on. Because what really gets you is when something connects with one of your wounds and hurts. And it creates a reaction in you, or you get triggered, and like then you're functioning out of that wound, and that is way more disruptive.
Right.
Whereas like a mom can like parent like 4 kids, and they're blowing up emotionally all day long, and you're emoting with them. But if they get into something in you that makes you feel like, well, I think I'm a bad mom, and I blah blah blah. If something in them triggers something in you, then the emotional cost to you is very significant.
Yeah.
If you're like, oh, sweetie, yeah, I mean, you have a lot of feelings right now. This is really hard. It's not really that taxing. Even if you're in the moment with them emotionally. So I think it's healing and maturity in us.
Yeah.
And then after that, I would say then it's spiritual devotions. It's like spending time, increasing your devotion and love for God, being like reading the word, or like letting that reorganize where you're at, finding comfort in the realities, getting released from how the world is choking you out with its vines, and like getting that off of you and finding your first love again and reorienting yourself towards grace rather than the like thinking you're a good person and I'm doing all these good things and be like, no. I'm only an unworthy servant doing my job, who is also the beloved of the Father. And that's who I am.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to go do these things and he's going to be proud of me. It's going to be awesome. Like getting back to those places and being like, okay, yeah, this is why I live. This is what I'm doing. This is who I'm loved by. It'll reset you. So yeah, I could say a lot more about that.
Yeah.
I did an hour and 20 minutes on the wall yesterday and how people hit that in their spiritual life. And maybe we can do a podcast on that sometime.
Training. That would be a good idea. Yeah. Just a like practical thing I've noticed with this. So I think definitely true. Attend to your own spiritual life so that it can't lodge within like, oh, that's the exact thing I'm facing right now. But I've noticed when I have a productive schedule and I'm you wake up, you do the things you got to do so that when you're sitting in that, like across from someone at small group or whatever, you're not still thinking, I haven't gotten to the dishes, the laundry, I need to send that email because you just can't be there with that person. So what you do all day before, okay, I'm about to meet with this person matters because you can't be in
There's a lot of truths in that. And yeah, I've seen that in my own life where I'll like burn time like watching YouTube videos or playing a video game or something like that because I want to like blow off some steam and have a moment to myself.
Sure.
But because I don't really practically like change that light bulb and do this thing and like knock out these tasks.
Right.
Then later on I'm like, oh, I'm behind it to do the things.
Hanging over your head.
And you get a kind of hangover from that, Yeah. Yeah.
Cool. Okay. How do you get people to embrace your extreme differences? I think this was not meant to be written towards you specifically, the you in general. How does one?
Okay, my short answer to this is integrity, humility, and honesty, and time. Like I've said, if you want to have influence, there's three things. There's time, sacrifice, and integrity. If you have a relationship with another person, and you give it time, you both give time to the relationship, and you give the relationship time to develop. You make sacrifices where the other person says to themselves, Nick didn't have to do that. He made me more important than him. And there's no other reason than either his commitment to God, his love for us, or what. He's not going to get much out of this, right?
Yeah. So
you sacrifice to do as anonymously as possible, trying to maximize the benefit to the other person.
Yeah.
Right. And then third is integrity. You all are always the same person. And one of the main ways I do that early in relationships is I always keep my word. I do not give my word if I'm not going to do it. And if I give my word, it is my law. I will do what I said I would do. And some of that I get from my dad. It's just a family thing. But some of it is I've seen the fruit of that. When people know you will always keep your word, that your yes is yes and your no is no, to quote the Bible, their attitude towards you changes because most people do not do what they say they're going to do. Because most people fall into the treason of empathy, where when I'm with you and you say, Nick, I just really need this from you. Like, okay, Sawyer, okay. And then I'm with somebody else who needs the opposite. And they say, well, I need you to do this. I say, oh, okay, Alice. And then I don't do what I told you I would do. I told you I would do it when I was with you. But then I go away and now you're not the most important thing because you're not in front of me. Most people cannot remember what Alice is going to want when they're talking to Sawyer. So sometimes I'll be talking to people and say, Nick, can you do this for me? And I'll say, I'm sorry, I can't do that for you. If I had unlimited resources, I absolutely would, but I can't. I'm sorry. And sometimes they were like, well, why am I not a high enough priority? And my answer is, sadly, yes, that's correct. I don't like to say it like that, but I have money. I can't give you this, or I have time. I can't give you this time because I'm giving it to other things. By definition, you're right. Yeah, it isn't a high enough priority for me. I'm really sorry. And so I try to be as humble as I can about that, but I try to be really clear because I'm going to talk to Alice and my yes has to be yes to her. And so my no has to be no to you. And so integrity is very critical. I find that when I give it time, I make sacrifices, and I do what I say, I have integrity. And then what I find is like candor and disclosure. I let them see who I am, which includes saying, I am this extreme person. I know these things are wrong with me. Let's not pretend they're not. Knowing who I am and being able to say, look, yeah, that's a thing. I'm sorry about that. And I'm comfortable with that. And I live by grace. So I don't have to prove to you I'm a good person. I belong to Jesus. I'm his servant. That's what I'm doing. I'm a good person or a bad person, whatever you want to say. Like, I fear God more than most men, however you want to say it, right? My goal is to serve Jesus right now, whatever you think of me.
Yeah.
And if I stay focused on that, I find people over time accept me. Some people have a real negative response at first, and then they come around. Some people decide they hate me because of what I believe. But very few people really dislike me if there's any possible compatibility over time, if I give it those 4 things: time, sacrifice, integrity, and disclosure. Mm-hmm.
Good. Okay.
Oh, let me say one more thing.
Yeah.
I'm also quick when I think that there's a breach. So if I think something has happened, I go fast and talk to that person. This is especially true for cross-cultural or cross-ethnic dynamics.
Okay.
Because I don't want that to fester. Because if I do something, if I have a relationship with a black pastor, right, and something happens, I do not want that to fester.
Yeah.
Because we're from different cultures. And
you mean on
his side.
His side, your side, either?
Well, usually I'm not offended. Usually, like, if I'm offended, I feel like I can metabolize that.
Okay.
So if I feel like I can't just forgive and let it go, because the Bible says to overlook an offense is a glory.
Yeah.
Right? So I don't, like the Bible says, look, if I'm truly offended, but the offended, you go to your brother, right? But that's like an offense that is so egregious you cannot get over it.
Yeah.
The Bible says that the first thing you should say is, can I just overlook this?
Mm-hmm.
Right? And the answer for 80% of offenses in life should be yes. I would want somebody to overlook it if I did it. I don't want to be a moral hypocrite, right? The golden rule, do to others as you, right?
Sure.
So I'm just going to overlook it. It's fine. I can usually do that.
Yeah.
I can usually chalk it up to the balance between us of what isn't direct guilt.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay. But if there's a breach.
I forget, I think, in C.S. Lewis's essay on forgiveness in The Weight of Glory, and I've asked people to like look at that book because because the essay membership and the inner ring are in that book.
Mm-hmm.
But the very next essay is called Forgiveness. And Lewis says, okay, whenever somebody offends us, there is some portion that there is an excuse for, and there's a portion that there's no excuse for, right? Forgiveness isn't making excuses for what there's an excuse for. We should give that to people freely.
Yeah.
There is a portion that there's no excuse for. And the question is, what are you going to do with that? And forgiveness is releasing that which there is no excuse for.
Yeah.
So if I know that there's an offense between me and, like, let's say an African-American pastor that I'm friends with, right? The first question is, how much of this is just excusable? There's an excuse for it. In many cases, I can come up with that being 100%. And if it's 100%, then I just excuse it.
Okay.
Right? And my hope is that he or she will do the same for me. Right? Where I don't think that's going to be possible, or I even fear it might be hard, it's my job to be an ally to them. Right? And so if they're struggling with being resentful against me because something I did or something somebody in my church did, I want to go and I want to take that off their plate. Right? They have to be godly, but it's my job to be their ally. So I go and say, hey, I'm really sorry this happened, or what happened? Can you tell me what happened? How can we deal with this? I want to apologize for, even if I don't think I necessarily have to. Like there was a pastor where he and I disagreed really strongly on the interpretation of a public event. I said, hey, let's sit down together. Because I thought part of this was like, we hadn't talked in a year and a half. We just hadn't seen each other and really understood where each other was coming from. We sat down for like 2 hours and talked. And at the end of it, he was like, man, we should do this again. And like, cause he's a good man. And like, man, he frustrated me what he said. And I frustrated the heck out of him. But when we saw each other and we understood like what was happening with our kids, what was happening with our churches, what Jesus was doing in their lives, we were like, yeah, we're going to miss each other. We're going to have different opinions on things. Right. And he's committed to the unity of the church. I'm committed to the unity of the church. We left as friends. And here's what I know. He didn't have to carry that one more minute about how like Pastor Nick thinks blah, blah, blah. Ugh.
Right.
He could walk away being like, Pastor Nick and I are good and focus on whatever else is going on in his life, which is a lot.
Yeah.
The more that kind of stuff we can do in the church, everybody can do that stuff.
Yeah.
Everybody can do it. Yeah.
It's good. Okay. Next question. It says, you said the church is built on Peter. This is capital C church, to indicate that the church is an institution. Why do you think that Jesus founded the church on a fallible human being, aka Peter? In Matthew 16:18, when Jesus said, I will build my church on this rock, Greek word being Petra, refers to the feminine Petra, the same as the cornerstone in 1 Corinthians 3:11, referring to Jesus himself, not Peter, which is Greek Petros. I might need to look up some passages here.
Yeah. 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 So this is there's been a lot of debate about Matthew 16:18. Okay. About what is what, right? Most biblical scholars, including Protestant ones, since Luther, have accepted that in Matthew 16:18 that Peter himself is the main focus of that promise. This is why Jesus says, "You are Peter." Peter literally means rock, right? It's the word Petros in Greek, right? And then he says, "On this Petra or rock, I will build my house," right?
Yep.
Oikonomia, which is like to the building of a household, or essentially it's the same word for stewardship, right? I will build the stewardship of the house of God, right? The fact that Petra is feminine, I don't think is of sufficient significance, right? Because the word church that comes right after it is feminine.
Okay.
So I wouldn't argue from this that because the noun is in the feminine, that it is therefore not Peter, because Peter is masculine.
Got it.
Right. So, I suppose if that person gave a different reference to this, because when it says, okay, so it's not flesh and blood that it has revealed this to you, but my Father in heaven. Anyway, without I don't want to get into too much Greek here, but it is true. Like, one of the things we have to deal with is the fact that the apostles say a number of things, and sometimes we try to take them too literally and apply them too pedantically. So when Paul says in 1 Corinthians 3:11, "For no one can lay a foundation other than that which is laid, which is Jesus Christ," and he is saying that as a foundation for the church, because he's saying that the church is like, essentially he's talking about the ministry of a person. So he's talking about ministers like Paul and Apollos, right? And he's saying, look, if that person lays a foundation, meaning in the faith of the people of the church, in anything else, it's going to be like the kinds of things that when they're in a fire, they just all burn up.
Yeah.
And there's nothing left.
Yep.
And so Jesus Christ himself is the foundation and chief cornerstone, and that is the gospel. He is himself the gospel, right?
Yeah.
When Peter says, "On the rock, Peter, he will build his church," he is not saying that Peter is the same thing as Jesus Christ, right? What he's saying is that the ministry of the apostles is foundational to the church, in that, like, the witness of Jesus and like the apostolic writings that witness to what Jesus said and what he taught. And when Jesus says, "Teach them to obey everything I've commanded you," well, we know that through the writings of the apostles in the apostles' ministry. So there's a sense in which the apostles are foundational, right?
Yeah.
And if you search on the word foundation, one of the passages you get is built on the apostles and prophets, right? So in Ephesians 2:20, it says this: "So then you are no longer strangers and aliens, but fellow citizens with the saints and members of the household of God." So again, say that oikonomia, that the stewardship of the house of God. What's it built on? Built on the foundation of the apostles and prophets, Jesus Christ himself, Christ Jesus being himself the chief or the cornerstone, in whom the whole structure being joined together grows up into a holy temple of the Lord. In him, you also are being built together into a dwelling for the place of God by his Spirit. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So you see, as the apostles use this same metaphor, it has different levels of complexity, different direct references, right? But in this is the most detailed one in the Bible. Yeah. And what Paul says is like, okay, think about it this way. God is building a whole temple, which is the church, which is all of us, right? And as you get down to the more foundational stuff, you have the apostles and the prophets, okay? Which could be the New Testament apostles and the Old Testament, or it could be the New Testament apostles and the gift of prophecy functioning in the church. That's not entirely clear, right?
Okay.
But that's the foundation, and everything's built on that. You can't have anything else without that foundation. So the apostles are foundational. They are the foundation, right? But then he says, To get specifically though, what's that all oriented to? It's all oriented to the cornerstone that sets the line for everything in the church. And that is Jesus.
Yeah.
Jesus is the cornerstone. And then out of him comes the prophets and the apostles. And on that, all the church is built. Now that's the most detailed version. So in what sense is the church built on Peter? Well, Peter is an apostolic cornerstone, apostolic stone that is lined up to the cornerstone of Jesus.
Yeah.
On which he builds the church. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so interpreting this biblically, you can say Peter is the foundation stone in Matthew 16. Now, I do think contextually, it is Peter in the position of declaring Jesus as the Messiah.
Yeah.
Because the very next verse, right? Jesus is like, okay, I'm going to suffer. I'm going to be a suffering Messiah. And Peter's like, no. And he says, get behind me, Satan.
Right.
Jesus is not going to build his church on Satan.
Right.
Right. So the role Peter plays is foundational to whether or not he's foundational. If he plays the role of being the one out of even all the apostles who gets first, who receives the revelation of God that like, this is the Messiah.
Yeah.
And he says it, he's like, yep, I will build my church on you. But it is still contingent as to whether or not Peter plays that role. Because the minute he doesn't play that role, he is literally Satan. And all that's in the same passage.
Yeah.
We should not be having Pope arguments about this.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So, and then when you see this in the more detailed sense in which Paul writes it in Ephesians chapter 2, he's like, you see, it's Jesus is a cornerstone. The apostles are foundational. We build upon them. That's both Protestants and Catholics can believe that.
Yeah.
But what you don't get from that is papal authority in the See of Rome with universal jurisdiction and apostolic succession and blah, 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 blah. I mean, I say blah, blah, but I just mean all the other stuff that goes with it.
Absolutely.
And that's why as Protestants, we say there's a lot of stuff we could affirm on that. You could affirm bishop, church government. You could affirm jurisdictions. Like some of that stuff we could accept as a prudential way of governing the church. But the Catholic church's claim that you have a single bishop in one place that is passed down by location rather than person. And you like go all these things and you're like, that oak tree is not in the acorn of Matthew 16. You got to do a lot of additional work that is not there.
Yeah.
And Protestants are kind of like, look, if it's not there, we can't pretend it's there.
Yeah.
If you built it, we have to say this is what's there, and then this is stuff we've built on top of it. So if we look to reform the church, we can look at the stuff that we built on the Word of God, and we can
change it.
We can reassess it. We might have to renovate it. There might be some things that we might have made some generational mistakes.
Yeah.
And then there's some people who are like, no, the house is the house. It's all the cornerstone. And that's the major disagreement between Roman Catholics and Protestants.
Yeah. Cool. I think that's clear. Next question says, how will somebody know when they're operating in their most full self, the part of the body that they were created to be?
I think, generally speaking, you'll get affirmation from godly people.
Yeah.
You'll generally, the people that you minister to will find it helpful. Usually you will feel some fulfillment in it. You'll be like, that was worthwhile.
Yeah.
It may feel like it's a difficult thing for some people, but easy for you.
And I think the way the first step towards finding out some of those things is to just show up and say, well, where do they need help? Let me try that. I guess I'll speak to people maybe my age or younger, because you don't know until you try, and then someone goes, oh, you're kind of good at that. Maybe the Lord has gifted you in that. Yeah.
Yeah. You want to get at a state of humility so that you've put away all the I want people to see me. I want to be great. We have this problem in the worship ministry, for example. It's like, okay, who wants to be seen and who wants everybody to have their taste in music and who wants to facilitate the congregation as normal people who aren't professional singers adore God through poetry and music.
Yeah.
Right. And and some people come in and they have some of this fleshliness functioning, but they also do love worship and worshiping God. But that's how worship leaders grow. They have to put one to death and grow into the other.
Yeah.
So I would say, and the other thing too is remember, you can be a part of the body without having a really strong gift in that area. Some parts of the body just are showing up. For example, one of our perennial difficulties is just having people in the nurseries, people who will hold babies.
Yeah.
And give parents a break and let parents fully focus on things, right? And a lot of times it's only parents with young kids who get roped into serving, right? Yeah. But if you can pass a background check and you can be kind and loving towards a couple of little kids and just deal with sometimes the stress of it, because sometimes they'll cry and whatever, you don't have to be super gifted,
right?
The kids, people always say, don't say anybody can do it. You have to have at least a good attitude, right? But if you can have a good attitude, pass a background check and like be like, I can do this. I know there's a lot of moms and dads and they're just like spread thin in this stage of their life. One of the things I can do is I can get in there and I can hold some babies and I can feed some goldfish and I can take care of some stuff. I can do that.
Yeah.
You don't have to have some kind of like, you don't have to be a kid whisperer.
Right.
Right. So sometimes you have to start with some stuff like that. Just straight service. And then sometimes you'll be like, okay, oh wait, I actually am much better at teaching 4-year-olds basic Bible stories than I am at calming down 18-month-olds.
Yeah.
Okay. Now we're talking about, okay, do the thing you're better at.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense? So I'd say first serve, make a contribution, even if it's a little bit flailing. If you have a good attitude and you show up when you say you're going to show up, those are the two most important things.
Yeah.
Then from there, subdirect till you find something you're good at.
Great. Okay.
Oh, let me say one more thing about that.
Oh, yeah.
What we find in the church, and this is a cultural contagion, is people don't volunteer and they don't do what they say they're going to do. And so they don't show up.
Mm.
That is our biggest problem. That is why we can't accomplish what we need to accomplish. It's not because people aren't gifted enough.
Yeah.
It's because people are like, I don't know. They don't want to make commitments.
Yeah.
They don't want to take on responsibilities. And what I'd rather have you do is take on responsibility. Like, I will be there every other week for 6 months and then I'll reevaluate.
Mm-hmm.
And then if at the end of 6 months, you're like, I think I need to do something else, do something else. But this is the whole, let your yes be yes and your no be no.
Yeah.
It's okay to look like Gwen in the face or Bethany in the face and be like, I'm going to do this. I will do this much and I will do it this long. And then we'll decide. Or at some point you're like, look, I can't do this anymore. But
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's been great. But what people do is they just get really passive about it. And they're like, I don't know.
Yeah.
And here's the thing. If you want to have that attitude, that's okay. But it's an immature attitude that doesn't take responsibility. And here's the problem with it. It's nobody can accomplish anything like that. Right?
Yeah.
So this is why, like, if you go in the military, you can't leave. Because you can't accomplish what they have to accomplish if people can show up when they want to show up and leave when they want to leave.
Yeah.
Right? Similarly, this is true for anything that you want to get something done. Double-mindedness. Well, I could do it or I cannot do it. Nope. Doesn't get you anywhere. You don't even know who you are.
Mm-hmm.
People who know what they are make commitments and they fulfill those commitments. And people who do that, they get stuff done. And this is true for employment too. Who wants an employee that doesn't know what they're about?
Yeah.
So anyway, that's what we need. So if you want to take your part of the body, you don't need to find your like gifting. Yeah, that's a secondary thing. And we should move in that direction. But first, take on responsibility, fulfill your word, show up for what you said you would do. Those are the first steps. That's just basic maturity. Then we can focus on gifting.
Yeah. Great. Okay. This one's a longer one. We may want to break it into parts. So jump in there as I'm reading it so that you can address parts as I go. How do you reconcile saying it's hard to find yourself outside of marriage and your argument that we are meant to get married with 1 Corinthians 7, 1-8 about it being better not to marry? Also, Jesus talks about marriage not existing in heaven, Matthew 22, 29-30. Do you want to pause there or keep going?
Sure. Yeah. So right now, so I'm going to start the second and then I'll go back to the first. So
Sure.
Marriage not existing in heaven, correct. We will not have the same creation mandate in heaven, including being fruitful and multiplying and providing godly offspring for God, right? So Malachi 2, the very end of the Old Testament, and Genesis 1, the very beginning, right? The creation mandate is partly for us to be replicating the image of God, self-replicating. That taking dominion and being fruitful and multiplying are the two major focuses of the creation mandate, which is the purpose of human life in creation. Mm-hmm. The institution that executes that, a la Genesis 1 and 2, is marriage. Male, female, monogamous, and intending to be procreative. Okay? And not just that, but to raise godly offspring, which is something that we do over time, and we fulfill the roles of things like, for example, Deuteronomy 6, like talk about the Lord when you walk and when you like parenting and being in family life is part of that creation mandate. Mm-hmm. That is, and I'm going to use the word normative, meaning the vast majority of human beings need to embrace doing that. That should be the default setting of what you plan to do. Mm-hmm. Okay. Now, it's never been the case that 100% of people have gotten married and have children. Some people don't get married. They don't find the right person. Their marriage falls apart. They can't have children. They find out they're infertile. There's 100 things. And in the Bible, people in these non-normative situations are seen by God, helped by God, honored by God, and even put in profound election spots in the importance of salvation history by God.
Yeah.
So what God does is he says, this is what we're all basically doing. He sort of like commissions the human race to get married and have children and to take dominion, right? And then he takes people who can't fulfill this role for one reason or another, right? Hagar gets thrown out. She's a single mom, right? Rahab is a prostitute, but she chooses to believe. Hannah can't have children. She's infertile. She's the second wife of a husband who loves her, but she can't have children. She's infertile, right? Now, in the cases of infertility, in many cases, God gives a miraculous child, right? But what he's doing in doing that is showing that these people are part of his salvation history, that he sees them, that they matter, that just because they're not in the normative role, they don't matter less. In fact, in some ways they matter more because they can fulfill roles that other people can't fulfill. Yeah. So for example, by the time you get to Isaiah 54, it says that the expansion of the church is not procreative, right? But the barren woman has more children than she who's had sons and daughters, right? And that's a picture of the church, right? That the church spreads evangelistically. People come to believe, and there's a spiritual adoption into the church. The adopted children of God, more than even like the Jewish people accepting the Messiah and them becoming children of God via procreation. So Isaiah 54 points forward to a time in the church where people become children of God, partly by being children of Christian families. But the church is also massively an adoptive family, right? And what God is saying is the adoptive peoples will outnumber the procreative peoples. And so the tent will expand and expand and expand. The family will become enormous. But then you get to the next chapter, you get to Isaiah 55, which is a different thing. And then by Isaiah 56, he says, but the memorial in my temple for the eunuch, i.e. the person who either for misfortune, for greed that they later repent of, or for injustice, they were castrated and put as a slave in a certain kind of service, that the eunuch who keeps my Sabbaths, right, and does what is right, that is, they have faith. The righteous person lives by faith. They will have a memorial in my temple, in the pillars of my temple, better than sons and daughters. So God can honor people through sons and daughters. Sons and daughters are an incredible heritage. They are in some ways the heritage that human beings receive and pass on in the institution of the family. But God is saying there is a memorial in his presence that comes from serving him, understanding the adoptive nature of his kingdom, where the single person can receive a memorial that's better than sons and daughters. Yeah. Right. So the mature Christian faith says, yes, both. Yes, both. And one of the reasons why I hit on marriage so much, and I know that this offends and hurts some of the people who have not found an adequate person to marry or feel that they do have the gift of singleness, is because I believe that in our generation, we have separated procreation from sex. We have undermined what marriage is really for. We have taken it out of the creation mandate. We believe that the Great Commission is for us, but the creation mandate isn't for us. They're both for us. And so I have to emphasize what's being lost, especially when it's normative human life. Yeah. We need like 85% of people to get married and have children, or to try to, because some percentage won't be able to have children even when they get married. And then some people won't find a suitable person, and some people will experience divorce or whatever. So the problem is there's going to be a lot of chaos in any system, right? So almost everybody has to plan to get married and have children, for enough people to get married and have children, to have a functioning society. And then anybody who, for whatever reason, can't assimilate or be part of that normative structure, what God does is he creates space for all those people. Yeah. Right? All those people have a place and a plan and an opportunity in a way, and they even can be in something that Paul in one context calls better, or they can have a memorial that is a treasure or a recognition or a benefit from God, that is even better than sons and daughters. Does that make sense? And if you can get that into your heart, because like I know people, for example, who got married and they have kids, and their kids walked away from the Lord, and they're like, crap, like that was the heritage. And it's like, okay, even in that context, if you love everyone as your sons and daughters, if you do what every single person, married person, everybody's called to do, there is an additional heritage that even if Jesus said, I came to bring the sword, and that includes meaning dividing some parents against their own children. Yeah. The gospel will do that. It will divide you sometimes from your own children, but God gives you an additional non-procreative opportunity to bring in sons and daughters in the Lord. And that heritage is everlasting one. In that sense, it is even better than sons and daughters. Does that make sense? And if as Christians, we can see all of that, right? Then we can see God's will. And so I have apologized and I don't apologize to single people who get frustrated at me, because I was like, look, I have to preach the normative thing that's being forgotten and ignored. And for some of those single people, I'm trying to get the person that should recognize them and marry them to wake up.
Yeah.
I'm trying to help people to say, like, you're not looking for Mr. Right. You're looking for a godly person who is an adequate person who's willing to love you and you're willing to love, and that you can have a love affair together. Not because it's some kind of weird storybook, but because you choose to love that person and to do a wholesome thing with them.
Mm-hmm.
Because look, in 15 years, you're not going to be hot anymore. Like all that like fervor and whatever that's all your procreative system saying, I want to make humans. And then we make it romance and sex and like status and all that kind of crap. That's all just vapor.
Sure.
Right. And then if you get married, you either become disappointed because 15 years later, all that's, I mean, it's not gone, but it's like,
yeah,
it just isn't the biggest thing anymore.
Mm-hmm.
You're doing all these other wholesome things. You're tending the garden. You're not planting the rose. It's like being angry. It'd be like the way we look at sex is like, we want to plant the garden every week, but it never grows anything. And we just love planting. We just love the planting season. And so every week we like dig out the seeds again and we plant it all over again. And it's like, no, those early years are to find somebody, have children.
Yeah.
Like let having children make you not hot anymore. Embrace that that's what life is. And because our culture has totally lost that, right? Like in most people's minds, if they're in their teens, 20s and 30s, there is virtually no relationship between sex and fertility in their minds at all.
Mm-hmm.
When sex is your fertility system operating, that's what it is.
Yeah.
Right. And so like, I have to talk about that.
Yep.
And if I talk about that enough to get through to people, single people are going to get angry at me. They're gonna be like, well, what about us? And it's like, no, you're right too.
Yeah.
But like, I'm trying to, what's happening right now is people aren't getting together. People aren't doing the normative thing.
Mm-hmm.
Our birth rates are in the toilet. Young people aren't marrying each other. They're not even going on dates. They're asking who you voted for on the first date and being like, I can't possibly, like literally the human race is falling apart. And so I can't, and so if you're like, okay, like, what is the problem? It's the old C.S. Lewis thing. Like, are we running to a flood with a fire extinguisher? Like, are we still thinking, this is like people who think that our sexual problem is still prudishness rather than that we're all acting like prostitutes. We're so licentious and fornicating, right? We are a licentious and fornicating culture. That's what we are. We're not prudes.
Yeah.
But there's some little subcultures that are prudes, but
by and large,
we're the other thing. So, and that's what I have to preach at.
Yep.
And what that's going to do is it's going to bother some people who are single. But at the same time, we do need to affirm in the Christian church that there are certain situations like that in Corinth, or certain times or dynamics in which singleness is better,
mm-hmm.
or at least can be better. In 1 Corinthians 7, Paul is saying singleness is better or can be better if you use it for what he tells you to use it for. And my frustration, particularly with singles who are getting up there, like they're not in their like early fertile ages, they're like late 20s, getting into their 30s, and they're like, they haven't found the right person, and they're frustrated at me for talking about fertility.
Yeah.
And if I say something like this, part of the beauty of being single is your life is uncomplicated by family life.
Mm-hmm.
And you can serve and you can risk in ways that married people probably can't. They often get upset at me about that. They're like, Nick, how dare you talk like that? And I'm like, I talk like that because Paul talks like that. He says that a married person has to think about pleasing their spouse. That is part of their responsibility. Yeah. And thus the focus of their interests spiritually are divided. Mm-hmm. That's fun. Like that's something you can't get away from in marriage. So a single person does not have that liability. And that's what makes it better. Mm-hmm. That's what he says. He's like, that's what makes it better.
Yeah.
So if you can be single, that is, you can be celibate, and you can not be envious, right? And not be self-pitying, but you can focus on the focus and openness and availability to risk and change that affords you, and you use it, then singleness is better. The barren woman will have many children, and you will have a memorial in the house of God better than sons and daughters. Mm. But if you're single and you don't use it, it's not better than marriage.
Right.
It's worse because children are heritage. The only way it becomes better is if you use the focus of singleness to do great things in God's name so that you get the memorial that's better than sons and daughters. Then it's better.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
That does. Okay, I'm going to read the next part of the question. We may have already hit parts of it. I imagine there'll be at least one part you want to address.
Okay.
The church focuses so much on marriage and having children, but Jesus doesn't focus on that at all. Why is that such a huge focus in the church then? Shouldn't each of us, men and women, be focused on the work of Christ in spreading the gospel as Jesus commanded us? then they have a note about the fact that Jesus did command that to both men and women, which I'm going to skip for now. It would seem that marriage and children are the blessing, but focusing on the work of Christ above that is the purpose. I'm going to pause there. Anything you want to address?
Sure. Yeah, I do believe that. Yeah, this is a classic. Like, are these 2 points sequitur? Right. Like you'll get people who will say, Jesus, never said anything about homosexuality, so
therefore
we shouldn't talk about it, right? Or it's not part of sexual immorality or whatever. Like the argument for like what Jesus seemed to emphasize and what he didn't seem to emphasize and those sorts of things. I think you have to be careful about that argument. Like the argument that they're making generally, which is that the main focus of Jesus' ministry is to go and tell and to make disciples, as opposed to him being somebody who preached, hey, let's all get married and have children, is true. The other question you can ask is, was there any doubt about getting married and having children in Jesus' day in a profoundly Jewish culture?
Sure.
In which there was no social security and children were your long-term stability, and where women would like weep before the Lord if they couldn't have children, and barrenness or infertility was considered like the worst thing that could possibly happen to you as a woman.
Like maybe he didn't have to say it.
Yeah. Like I like to paint this contrast, you would have to believe that both of these were major issues and he chose one and not the other. And I would be like, nah, I don't think so.
Yeah.
I don't think one was a major issue. I think that the Pharisees were teaching the right thing on that stuff. And it's actually like the culture was teaching the right thing on marriage and having children, but they were not getting at the deeper truths of the law, and they were not making disciples, and they were not, and that was Jesus' corrective and fundamental emphasis. So I do think, like, listen, any person who says, I am going to go for Jesus, I'm going to go and tell the gospel.
Yeah.
And to do this, I'm going to be single. I think that is very dignified, and you could argue that it is pursuing something better than sons and daughters. I agree with that.
Yeah.
But that's the only reason. So the person who wrote this, I'd be like, I agree.
Yep.
If that is the reason, then great. But here's the problem. For how many people who are unnecessarily single is this the reason?
Right.
And my answer is, I don't have to take off my shoes to count the number of people I know that are really using their singleness for this. I know some people I could name names right now and be like, this person is. A lot of those people be like, look, if I found the right person, I would still get married.
Yeah.
But while I'm single, and that's what I did. I mean, I got married pretty young, but it was post when puberty started for sure. And there were years where like, I wish I had somebody to have and to hold, and I didn't. And but I lived a focused life.
Yeah. And
I spent a lot of time doing ministry and going and telling on my college campus. And then when I got married, I had more stuff to worry about.
Yep.
So yeah, absolutely. And for some of this can be life stagey too. Like there are some people that like lose their husband at 50.
Yeah. And
they have to decide, well, am I going to get remarried, or am I going to use this possibility for focus to do? So yeah, I don't disagree with this. I just disagree with that it disproves something else.
Yeah.
The biblical doctrine of family is stable throughout the Bible. The emphasis on going and telling in the commission is accentuated and focused. Yeah. So what this person is saying is right, but it's not relevant to the general biblical doctrine of marriage, which is stable throughout the Bible.
Got it. Okay, last part of this same question. Has marriage become a tool of organization within the church rather than the blessing of relationship it was meant for? And then this is a note that maybe I should have read at the beginning, but it just goes over the whole question. This person's saying this as a married person with children who understands the great value of it.
Yeah. Yeah. So the question this person asks is, has marriage become a tool of organization within the church rather than the blessing of relationship? I would say no. Can it? Or can that happen in various amounts? Sure. Yes, absolutely. And I do think this can be overemphasized for sure. And I think that when you have married pastors who have children, it's common for that to be the default application in sermons.
Yeah.
Or if that's just the majority, right? You naturally apply things to the majority.
Sure.
Especially if you're like me and you just like run out of time in sermons to do differentiated applications.
Hit as many people as you can.
Yeah. So again, I'm very sympathetic to the claims of this. I think that these are good concerns. For me, this is a tension we have to keep managing. It's not a problem we can never solve. Mm-hmm. Especially in the secular world where we're infertile, we're not getting married, we get divorced for any reason we want to. Like when the biblical institution of marriage is falling apart, and it is the institution, marriage is the human institution. We have to do that. We have to support it. And yet we should be able to say what's true about singleness, and we should also emphasize the proclamation of the gospel to all people. So but and how we emphasize those is a tension we have to manage. And I will not always get it right.
Cool. All right, moving on. Some people don't have access to great church structure, teaching, and service opportunities like we do here at High Point. Can they be fully part of the body of Christ if the institutional structure is missing?
Usually, I think almost anybody can, if they have the right attitude, can find fruitful labor to do.
Yeah.
I've been in some pretty small, pretty bad churches in my life.
Yeah.
Like especially early on in my life before I was in a ministry. But I remember being 16 years old in a church with 40 people and a relatively uneducated pastor, and there's ministry for me to do. It wasn't really that hard to find it.
Yeah.
So I think so.
Probably easier to find
in some ways. Mm-hmm.
Because if things aren't happening, you're like, someone should make this happen.
Someone should do this. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think that one of the things that's nice about High Point is a lot of stuff is done for you. Mm. So when you take on responsibilities, it's pretty focused what your responsibility is.
Yeah. Everyone has their lane.
Yeah. And I think that makes commitments seem less daunting. Mm. And it is true in smaller churches, you take on more capacious or like complicated. Mm. You're like, well, I'm going to help with the children. It's like, okay, well, can you get the snacks this week? And can you and you have multiple ages in the same room. And but like, that's what I actually think that's perfectly healthy.
Yeah.
So I would encourage people to do that. But yeah, I mean, there's going to be times and situations where it's hard to take your place in the body of Christ. But I think you can almost always take your place somehow.
Great. Next question. It says, historically, institutions also excluded ideas and people that didn't toe the line or didn't have a good way to examine border ideas over time. The Catholic view of helpful Protestant doctrine, for example. Okay. How do institutions take in potentially helpful new thoughts without feeling them as a threat? Is that supposed to be a function of the institution already? And then they have a follow-up. What about when that function is missing or unhealthy, if you think that there should be one?
Yeah. Okay, so there's institutions by nature want to standardize things because it's easier for the institution, right? So so if you take people, for example, like take gay people, for example, right? A lot of organizations are just going to overlook them because they're just a smaller percentage, right? And so, like, for example, in a church like ours, we are trying to help families. We had a lot of younger people. A lot of them got married. A lot of them have kids. They make a big cohort of our church. They're going through the more difficult period of their life. The culture is not really stacked up to help them, right? And so they are naturally the focus, or can be a primary focus of our organization. And so we can set up ministries and do all kinds of things to standardize stuff to make it easier for them, right? And that makes it easier for us. That can make it harder for other people to get involved and navigate things. So institutions always have that dynamic. In terms of ideology, that's also true as well. It's easier for us to say, this is what we believe. And people say, well, what about this nuance? And what about this nuance? And what about this nuance? The problem is that as people want to add nuance to make space for themselves, it creates complexity in the shared belief. And nuance doesn't make it to the pew, right? Like the further you go out from the like academic center, the more the idea naturally simplifies into like axioms. And axioms don't hold nuance very well. And so what the average person in the pew thinks is a bunch of heuristics or axioms or mental shortcuts, not the like complexified blah, 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 that they have themselves, right? And so like if a person says, hey, so like how do you nuance this for people like me?
Yeah.
Well, I can tell you how I nuance it for people like you because this is the thing I have expertise in. But by the time it gets to the average member of High Point Church, the nuance is gone. So either we've created a system that's simplistically in favor of your minority opinion, and that makes it to the pew, right? So with gay people, liberal churches, everything's cool. Or we standardize it and simplify it for the norm, and that makes it to the pew. Heterosexual marriage is marriage, right? Which is true. If you say, okay, well, what about people with like non-normative this and that, and how do you do the blah, blah, blahs with the such and suches and the law? Yeah, it'd be great if we could institutionalize a nuanced, but like generally speaking, that's not how human nature works.
Mm.
So organizations are bad at that. The healthy way for this to function, as far as I can tell, is that you do have people who are doing thinking in organizations and institutions and are always seeking to be reformed and reforming.
Yeah.
Right. To find new ideas that are coming out and to look back into tradition and bring stuff out of tradition in order to bring present renewal and to work that together as the organization iterates into the future. So there has to be a desire for change, knowing that change is possible and good, and knowing how you want to go through change, but then also how do you create a process for change in the organization that isn't destabilizing? Mm-hmm. That's really hard to do. Mm-hmm. And I think it's not done that much in some Roman Catholic contexts. So I think that they've made really big changes since the 1960s at least. But I've seen this in our churches. I've tried to like have a discussion about intoxicating substances and alcohol, or like having wine and communion. I've gone through this process of looking at stuff, talking with people, looking at the whatever, right? And then trying to go through a process of change in a way that is not highly disruptive, but it still has been disruptive for some people.
Yeah.
And that's been really sad for me. But I know that when I get to the end of it, it's not going to be this like 25-page nuanced paper. It's going to be either wine is a gift from God and we should have it in communion, or wine is alcohol is very dangerous and we shouldn't have it in the church. It's ultimately, it's going to simplify to one of those two propositions, neither of which is totally true by itself.
Yeah.
Though the first is more true if you can only have one. Right. So that's why we try to simplify it is wine is a good commodity from God. Drunkenness is a sin that is from the devil.
Yeah.
That should be simple enough that people could. Yeah. So we try to give simple responses, but that have like the two tensioned propositions.
Yeah.
And if people can hold those in tension, great. But most people still end up favoring one or the other.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Where does the body metaphor break down when talking about the global church? For example, we share belief in the gospel and Great Commission with Catholics, but don't believe that the Pope is the head of the church, in quotes, globally. Yeah.
I think the first thing to recognize is that we should be really careful about believing that Jesus believes in our divisions. So, for example, we have all these nation states in the world, the United States and Canada and Mexico and France and Papua New Guinea. And these are all these countries, right? Like, does God believe in that? Right? Like, I mean, at some level, he believes in authorities and he doesn't believe in anarchy. So, like, relatively speaking, every institution is instituted by God, Romans 13, right? But on another level, like, these are also like these arbitrary inventions that we've made that like God didn't make. He didn't be like, oh, let's do this.
Sure.
Right?
Our lens of looking at it.
Right.
Probably not quite his.
Right. Like we didn't set up our governments based on what he said. We did whatever we wanted. And so God could still be like, okay, generally speaking, governments are better. I've instituted authority and these authorities sovereignly. But so like similarly, you can look at the Catholic Church and the Orthodox Church and the Protestants, whatever. And I think that Jesus looks at those churches which are built on the foundation of the apostles and the prophets with Jesus as the chief cornerstone. And he counts those as part of his living temple. And he doesn't accept our divisions. That's the way I look at it. And then we have to say, okay, how do we live up to the biblical and apostolic function of being united? There's one faith, one baptism, right? God gives leadership to the church as a gift. This is supposed to make us able to serve the world. And so I look at what we've got and what Jesus says, and then I try to participate in being a sinew or a ligament of that. How do I help do it? But I've inherited the wars of my father, and this is the world I live in. Yeah. So what I do is I look at the way Jesus seems to look at it. I look at the situation we've got, and I try to, right? But that's one of the reasons why I'm very critical of the Roman Catholic Church, and I also am very open that I'm happy to be corrected by the Roman Catholic Church, and I believe that we should find a way to come back into union with each other, even though I can see no path for that.
Yeah,
because I this is what Jesus wants. So, right, and so I think it is tough, but I think we have to start with what Jesus says, and then approximate it as best we can.
Okay, here's a related question, slightly different. As a non-denominational church, how do we justify that limited institutional scale in light of the biblical levels of church leadership, such as the Jerusalem Council.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I don't think I think the way we justify it is we got dumped into a broken system.
Yeah.
And we're doing the best we can with the cards on the table.
Yep.
So, and over time we've changed. So at first we took the standard Baptist, Anabaptist, like the senior pastor is the only elder. We have a board of deacons, blah, blah, blah. Mm-hmm. Over time we were like, oh, it looks like plurality of elders in every place is what Paul says in Titus.
About when was that changed for people unfamiliar with the
history of High Point? It was like almost 30 years ago, I think.
Okay.
Because I think it was towards the beginning of Bill Mugford's administration or leadership. And that was, I think, 12 years long. And then the interim pastor was here for 2 plus 1 for the preliminary interim. And I've been here almost 16.
So, yeah.
So something like that.
Okay.
And so we try to move to that, right? So I would love for there to be like apostles, prophets, evangelists, teachers, and pastors itinerantly coming to High Point and helping us. I think that would be very biblical. I'm not against like a certain kind of presbytery that is a plurality of elders over a region, mm-hmm. or even a bishop. However, I have served in a church that had bishops, and it was like corrupt and incredibly unhelpful. Mm. And so I did not see a benefit in that. Yeah. However, being out here all by myself, having theologians or people like bishops who are truly great, could be really helpful.
Right.
So when I look at the New Testament, when people say, for example, the like official or like the church structures in the New Testament, what I see, and they're functioning on multiple continents, I just don't see a lot of hierarchical. What I see is a lot of consensual shared leadership. Like I just don't see like yes, I know that bishoprics developed quite quickly, and it's true that elders have authority in the local church. They are overseers. But like when the people came together for the Jerusalem Council, I don't think they like knew beforehand. Like they weren't like, okay, we're gonna have a council. This is how it functions. We have this many bishops.
Sure.
Our statements are gonna be authoritative and inerrant, and blah. Like basically, they had a problem. They were like, who are the relevant players here? Let's get them together. They came together in Jerusalem. They talked it over. Paul was like, I'm going because these people might screw it up if I'm not there. Because he wanted to make sure that the Gentiles were represented. They argued about it. They came to a good consensus. Yeah. And then they shared it with all the churches.
Yeah.
Right. And they shared it in an authoritative voice. Right. Like these guys who say different from us, they did not come out from us, the apostles. Mm-hmm. This is our apostolic teaching. We probably should know. We know about this. Right.
Yeah.
I think that is authoritative. I think that it is beyond error in that the proceedings are in the scriptures. I think this is inspired by God. But like, I think they made that up.
Right.
Right. I think that's what they did. They were like, this is how we should solve the problem. Yeah. So I think the Jerusalem Council is as much just a prudential solution of people willing maturely to work with each other than it is anything else. Yeah. Similarly, I think that's what the diaconate is. They were like, okay, wait, we can't serve the widows. Yeah. Because we have to preach and teach and pray. But we need this to be done right. Mm-hmm. Okay. And you guys are all arguing about this. You pick who you think should be a deacon. We'll ordain them and they'll do this work. It's a straightforward, highly prudential decision that fits the problem at hand and that's wise. I don't know why later these things became institutionalized and then we're like, oh, these are the authorities. And I just think that these are additional jumps of logic that do not exist in the scriptures. And I think that where I see the church functioning in a healthy way is you see people of real spiritual stature who have been put in positions of authority, who then in those positions of authority voluntarily work with each other and bring the church together to do the things Jesus told us to do. Mm-hmm. Where that happens, there's enormous fruit. And where people are like, no, you're not even a church because we're the blah, blah, blah. You guys are ecclesial communities and we're the only real church. And
not a lot of.
I can't help you.
Yeah.
I love you, but I don't understand you and I can't help you.
Great. What is the distinction between membership in the body of Christ and entering into official membership in an individual church? So I think they mean capital M, little m,
right?
Little c.
Membership in the body of Christ is the reality that comes from becoming a Christian. Yeah. That you belong to all believers too. that by being adopted into the family of God to become a son and daughter of God means that all of God's sons and daughters are your siblings.
Yeah.
Right? That the house that you come into, the house of God, is a house that has other inhabitants, and you come into habitation with them. Right? And so on. You could use a bunch of these kind of metaphors, right? Sure. You're being built into a holy temple. You're a stone that's part of the whole temple, right? The question is like, what's the prudentially, like, what's the best way to do that? Right? And so church membership is a way to say, okay, of all the things that the Bible says, how do we create a thing where we all know we're doing that? Like, I know you're part of it, and you know I'm part of it. Because membership requires something like a covenantal commitment to one another. So at High Point, in the Baptist tradition, we have a church covenant. Like, when we recite it like every other congregational meeting, we read it together, right? And it's like, here's what we're doing. Here's the agreement we make with each other. This is a promise. I will do this.
Yeah.
Right? You can count on me. And that's the agreement we make with each other. We say it out loud. It's explicit. It's affirmed. We know it, right? So like if somebody says, hey, if you and I are friends and I say, okay, so we're friends. And like, we've talked about like what that means. So listen, if you need to call me at 2 a.m. because something's like, you can call me at 2 a.m. and I will be there. And you're like, me too. And like, we know that, right?
Yep.
Then our friendship progresses on those terms. We know it. It's not like in the air, in the ether, like, whoa, what are we doing? And when you live in a totally non-committal, non-institutional culture where people quit on each other all the time, everything is a operationalized commodity thing. And I'll buy from you until there's a vendor who sells it cheaper. That's the world we live in, right? We live that way in terms of families and husbands and wives, right? We're a culture where we have a phrase, starter wife. Like, this is the world we live in.
Whoa.
Formalizing the I'm going to be here. This is what we're doing. Like this, the mystical thing Jesus says and the teaching he wants me to obey. Here's how we are practically going to do it. Because the minute you and I are going to do something together, us agreeing on it, what we're doing makes sense.
Yeah.
Church membership is practically agreeing in time space with human beings what it means that Jesus has made us members of one another. Right. And we write it down and we say what it is and we have criteria for it and right. And you can overdo that, but I think you can underdo it. And so I think it's very prudent for us to create a formal church membership. And the whole time I've been here, we've debated about how high and how low the standards are.
Yeah.
Because that's the question of prudence. I think having church membership is wise.
Yeah. Okay. This person says, I struggle with codependency. How can I turn to God to stop relying on other people?
I'm always concerned to answer that because I don't know if people know what codependency means. Does that make sense?
So why don't you give your definition and what you think other people define it as?
Yeah. Okay. So, I would define it something like, okay, and I'm not a counselor.
Sure.
Is like, I am dependent on you to allow me to continue to act dysfunctionally in a certain kind of way. And you rely on me to help you continue to be dysfunctional in a certain kind of way. Dysfunctional. And we depend on each other to allow each of us to function poorly.
Just keeps getting worse, down a spiral.
Right. Because you're there for me, I can keep being bad.
Okay.
Or immature or whatever.
Yeah.
And right. And
so when people say, someone comes to you and say, I think that I'm struggling with codependency, what is what you think they're actually thinking by that?
I think sometimes it means I depend on other people. Like, and if they weren't there for me, I don't know what I would do. I don't know if I could function.
Okay.
Right. Okay. So the Psychology Today definition is codependency is a dysfunctional relationship dynamic in which one person assumes the role of the giver, sacrificing their own needs and well-being for the sake of the taker. So, for example, if you have the narcissist and the codependent.
Okay.
Right. The narcissist loves to take, and the codependent falls into that because they love to give.
Yeah.
And this person gets to keep being a narcissist because this person gives.
Enables, yeah.
And oftentimes at some point, this person gets really tired of it.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? So sometimes it's like people talk about love bombing or like, I want to be loved by another person. Right. And so I give and I give and I give and I give and I give, hoping that if I give enough, they will love me.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so I think that it comes from a wound and a desire to be loved and a belief that you're not lovable. And if you don't give everything that you've got for a little bit of love, you're not going to be loved and you'll be abandoned and so on.
Okay.
And so I do think that dealing with that wound before a God who loves you without you giving him anything, that the gospel can speak to the wound of codependency. I think oftentimes you need somebody to help you specifically apply it.
Yeah.
Right? Because a lot of people have a hard time finding, okay, where is the actual wound of codependency? What is it? Where is it from? How is it working? And then say, what specifically about God, the gospel, the work of Christ, specifically speaks to this? And how do I keep reappropriating it until it starts to make a difference? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So I do think there's a lot that the gospel can say and Christian spirituality can do for somebody who's struggling with codependency.
Yeah.
But this is literally why we have the ministry of Oaks.
Yeah.
So that you can find somebody to help you really identify the issue and really apply the biblical solution. Because when we generally apply the general religiosity of Jesus to very specific wounds that are kind of like hidden in places in our hearts, the ointment doesn't always get onto the infection. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's, you got to get the ointment, the salve of Jesus, the balm of Gilead, into the actual wound itself. And that application process can sometimes be a lot better with some help.
Yeah, that's good. So oaksministrycollaborative.com. They'd be great people to help with that.
Yeah.
Okay.
A good counselor can do this, even if they're not a Christian, if they really are good. But that's the problem, is finding good counselors, like finding a good pastor, like finding a good hairstylist. It's like they're not all great, or they're not all great for you.
Great. All right. Here we go. Isn't differentiation amongst people what leads to conflict? Isn't the barrel sponge method more peaceful?
Okay, so differentiation is a word often used in family systems psychology where I'm differentiated if like you say, hey, Nick, I want you to come to this family thing that we're doing. I really need you to be there. Like this is part of us having a relationship, but I can't be there. I actually have another responsibility that I really should do. A differentiated person would be like, sorry, I would love to be your thing. I care about our relationship. I would love to be there. I have to be this other thing that is the priority that I have to set for myself. And I'm going to do it. And if you say, Nick, I just really need you to do it. Like, don't you care about us? And I just go, Sawyer, I would love to be there. I can't be there. Okay. So I am not you. You are not me. There's a differentiation between us. We're not enmeshed, to use psychological language. We're differentiated. Does that make sense?
Okay.
So a kid that can go off to college and not implode because their mommy isn't there is a differentiated child, right?
Got it.
Does that make sense? A kid that can go into the nursery at church and like they'll cry, but then they go, okay, I'm here now. Mommy's away. Developmentally, you want that slowly. And so like when we had kids early on, we handed our kids off to people all the time, whenever possible. Here, hold this kid. You know, and like people come to our house, they'd hold the baby. We'd go to church stuff. Other people would hold the baby. We'd be close. We'd be as close as we needed to be. So the kids seemed to be fine.
Yeah.
And then oftentimes that person would wander off with our kid. Yeah. You know, like these are people we knew, right? Right. And our kid got this like, I'm going to go away from mom. I'm going to come back to mom. I'm going to go, right? And so they differentiated, right? And this is part of parenting too, right? So in an organization, right, differentiation counters what is sometimes called chronic anxiety. Chronic anxiety is when the least mature person doesn't like what's happening. They're being called to change. Something's uncomfortable for them. And that discomfort triggers them to be like, oh, I don't like this. They raise the cry of anxiety among people and they say, hey, don't you care about me on the basis of togetherness? Come and like be in solidarity with me. That's called herding. So I'm going to herd people who care about togetherness, people who are emotionally healthy. They actually have empathy for me. I'm going to herd them together to care about my pain. And then I'm going to say, hey, we could fix my pain if we did this solution. The solution is not what you really need to do. It's a quick fix, right? So the leader wants to make a change. That change is forcing me to really grow. I don't want to grow. So we need to tell the leader we can't make this change. It's too disruptive. Too many people are going to, quote, get hurt, right? So then all these people that have been hurted, they all turn on the leader and they go, look, we can't do this. It's going to hurt too many people. Don't you see how Sarah is in pain? Like, don't you care about that, right? And then the leader's like, okay, I do care about Sarah. I care about you guys, and I care about togetherness. But listen, we have to make this change.
Mm-hmm.
And we can give Sarah whatever she needs, but we are making this change.
Yeah.
So that's differentiation. And so like a parent who says to the kid, look, I know you want to have ice cream before dinner, and I know you're pitching a fit. I get you have big feelings about this. You are eating your dinner before you're having ice cream, or you're never having ice cream again. Do you understand me? You can cry for the next week, and it will not change whether or not you get mint chip ice cream before you eat your broccoli. Yeah. That differentiation is critical in like for every human being. And yes, it does create conflict.
Yeah.
But the problem is that if you don't create that conflict, you will fall into the quick fix that you're being herded into. And then you're going to take this test again. Or your whole life is going to get ordered to emotional immaturity. And the most immature people are going to run whatever you're a part of. Whether it's your family, your kids will run your family. If it's your church, the most immature people and most ungodly people who spiritualize their emotional immaturity will run your whole church. And this can happen to a whole country. If enough of an electorate says, don't hurt me. Don't you guys care about me? Vote my way. Vote for the thing. Like your whole country can get possessed by chronic anxiety. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so whether it's like the conservative version of like, we got to get rid of these Muslims, or whether it's a progressive version, like we can't get rid of any of these illegal immigrants, or we're against America. Like there's lots of versions of this.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? And it happens on every level of human society. So differentiation, though it does create conflict, it is hard. And here's what I would say about the sponge, right? Isn't the barrel sponge more peaceful? He is.
Yes.
And he doesn't know it. There's no consciousness in this barrel sponge.
Right.
So is he peaceful? Yeah, but he doesn't know it. Like among we who are conscious, who are pursuing these greater things that God has laid before us, we have to live with morality and conscience and create a different kind of unity that comes from having organs. And as organisms, i.e. institutions, where we gather around to accomplish goals and goods together. And when we do that, yeah, there's going to be conflict, but that conflict produces maturity and productivity and survival and posterity.
Yeah.
And so it's worth it. And differentiation often will cause that person who's creating the problem to either leave, which is a possibility, or to grow.
Yeah.
And differentiation is for the person who is creating the anxiety. It's to say, you can grow. We'll help you grow. But togetherness is going that way.
Yeah.
It's not going to stay wherever you hold us.
Yeah. Great. All right. Next question.
Yeah, let's do one more.
Great. Based on this sermon, it's clear that membership to the local church is necessary for Christian life. If we do a survey at Easter similar to what we did this year in the future, would you consider adding an option that states something to the effect of, I consider myself a Christian, but I'm not currently part of a local church? It seems like this is another group of people who could benefit from outreach. This person said, we brought a number of family members to church who would fall under this category, who may have benefited from an extra push to be part of a local church besides the encouragement we've already given them.
Yeah. I don't think I would add that as another option among the four, but we also had a couple of check boxes that you could do, and me emphasizing that in the call to respond to the card is possible. So, Sawyer, since you tend to be in charge of these cards, if you make a note of that, I can add that in. I'd be glad to do that.
And just as an encouragement, I mean, we kind of get a front row seat we get to see all the cards. Other people don't, obviously. But some people, there were really positive responses, and I've heard from people who said, thank you so much for preaching the way we did. I think having to put stuff down on paper made the family members that I brought go, I'm doing this. I should maybe consider this. So
yeah. I mean, I'm sure lots of people didn't fill it out. I'm sure that the cards annoyed some people and so on. But I mean, Adam has 5 appointments this week of people who marked C. Yeah. Of like, I don't know where I am with God. And like to just like actually have concrete times with people where our pastors or people in our church get to sit down with people and be like, hey, where are you with God? How can I help? To help people get connected to a process or a guide is just incredibly valuable. It's in like, there's no sense in having visitors at your church. If you can't help them, find what they came to look for.
Yeah.
So I really do think that the Easter card thing has been good. I don't think I'm going to keep doing it for like Christmas Eve. I don't think I think I'm going to try to do something different for that. But I want to come up with something to do. Yeah. And we'll see what that's going to be. But yeah, the Easter card thing, I think that I'm going to keep doing it. We might change the aesthetics of it or something.
Totally.
But I think right now it's producing ministry opportunities for us that matter.
Yeah. Cool.
Well, thanks everybody for listening to this. There are a couple more we didn't get to. I'm 20 minutes late for a lunch appointment right now. That's why we're closing things up. But sorry, thanks for doing this and bringing clarity. And hopefully these answers help people.
Yeah, thanks for listening.